The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 558.
Oh, am I supposed to say that?
That's you. That's your part.
Top 10 co-op games.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom is still on the road, so Mandi joins me to talk about some of our recent plays, share a tale of amazement, and answer some questions from the mailbag. Plus, Geoff makes a case for calculus, and Mandi and I work together to renew our top 10 co-op games. I'm Eric Summerer, and joining me now, the Becca Hamilton to my Matt Hamilton, Mandi Hutchinson. All right, I've been waiting. Mandi, we are finally doing a show together and we can break out the curling references.
I know, but I feel like it's the first day of school. I'm so awkward.
No. So if you didn't know, that Becca Hamilton and Matt Hamilton were the mixed curling doubles team for the U.S. They didn't do as well as we hoped they would. I think somebody else won the gold in that particular event. I can't remember which country won that one.
Don't know. No, don't know at all.
Yeah, I think it was Canada that won that particular event. But the U.S. did win the men's gold, which is pretty awesome.
That's the part I was thinking about and crying a little on the inside. But that's okay.
Yes.
Shared victories are good, you know?
Yes. That's fine. So, Mandi, I am so excited that you are here speaking with me. Finally, we were planning this a couple weeks ago, and then we didn't actually manage to sync up our schedules just with the tornado and stuff. But I am excited to finally do an episode with you, even if everybody else wasn't expecting you to be here.
I know, and I'm excited too, and people have been asking. I've had so many people say, okay, when are you doing it with Eric? Eric's been with Suzanne, you've done Tom, it's been all over. I'm like, it needs to happen. And look, it just so worked out that Tom is away. I think they're all at the UKG Expo, and look at that. We get to do this podcast together.
Yes, although I do think it's funny that other than his brief cameo when you and Suzanne were at CMON, we have not heard from Tom on this program in I want to say a month and a half. It's been a long time since we've had time.
Quite a while. So I'm like, is he trying to tell us something? Or maybe he's just really busy.
Folks, we're not trying to drive the guy out. This is self-imposed. He filled up his dance card with a whole bunch of travel, and we are left to pick up the pieces.
I know, but I think we can do it. And, we got to definitely throw in some fun bits like curling references that may not have otherwise made it in the podcast.
Yes, well, we have free reign after all.
Excellent news.
So before we get into any specific games, we should at least get the programming notes out of the way. You and Suzanne, Mandi, were talking about what's coming up in the next couple weeks. And for some reason, you skipped a week when we were planning. I don't know if you're saying something like when you want a vacation or what, but Mandi and I are with you this week, and then Mandi and Suze, we think, as far as we know. So all of this is sort of up in the air because of everyone's travel schedules, but it should be Mandi and Suze next week. Then comes the big Origin show, and I can't wait until we're all together again and get to really hang out face to face, see each other, joke around, and have a big show in front of an audience at Origins. And then Tom and I should be back, fingers crossed, doing a show together for episode 561.
Yes, you definitely got that. We were chatting about birds, and I think I got distracted. Suzanne said something about us recording, and I meant to go back and say, wait, it's not that weekend. Well, next thing you know, we're done the podcast and gave the wrong dates. So thanks for clearing that up.
I've done that before. You start chatting, and you make a mistake, and that's where future Eric comes from.
Yes, I need this. This is good.
So speaking of Origins, you will be able to join us from Origins for Dice Tower tonight if you're listening to this the week it comes out. Next week, when we are at Origins, Tom and I will be in Columbus, but Crystal, who does the video show with us every other week, won't be, but we will be bringing her in as well. So Tom and I will be in one place, and Crystal will be joining us. And who knows, since everybody is at Origins, we might have a few people dropping in as well. That should be a real fun experience, trying to do Dice Tower tonight from the convention floor. So that'll be awesome. Check out the Dice Tower Twitter feed for a link, or YouTube, and you can join us live and chat with us and play games. It'll be a grand old time.
I'm looking forward to it. I think there'll definitely be a lot of fun and familiar faces on there, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens.
Speaking of which, thank you, Mandi, for filling in a couple weeks ago. I hope you enjoyed being on the show. How did you like interacting with the audience for Dice Tower tonight?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, I've been on the network doing video for, just gameplays and things like that, but not in that capacity, especially with some of the other contributors like Crystal and Ambi. We had a great time, and I think the chat was enjoying it as well, and Crystal did a really great job at the game. She really catered it to us being there, because she knows that Ambi and I like those kind of crunchier games, and so the game was tailored to that, and, made us feel good, like, yay, we actually did a good job, and everyone enjoyed it at the same time. So I can see why everybody loves all of you all on the show, and, when we were on the show, it had that same kind of energy, so I really liked it.
It feels like a party, really. I always look forward to hanging out, and when I missed it, I was very disappointed, and I'm delighted that you were able to jump in and fill in that particular week.
Oh, anytime. I'd love to do it again. It's so much fun.
So in also convention news, Dice Tower Con, we've just discovered, is sold out. There are some chances to grab a ticket. There's some threads on Board Game Geek. You can check out the Dice Tower Con Facebook group to get links to ticket exchange programs and stuff. So it is possible, fingers crossed, if you're still looking for a ticket, to come to Dice Tower Con. But if you're not able to, there still is an opportunity to hang out with the Dice Tower crew and play some games and ride on a giant ship. And that's the Dice Tower Cruise, which is coming up this coming January 2019. And there are still spaces available there. You can check that out at dicetowercruise.com and come sail with us. Mandi, you'll be there for that as well, right?
Absolutely. So much fun last time. I definitely have to be there again.
All right. It's time to jump into the games. I've been busy. You've been busy, but I see you've got some fun games to talk about. Mandi, why don't you go first? Oh,
boy. So I'm really excited to talk about this one because I've probably talked about it quite a bit on a few areas of my social media.
Yep.
But I'm going to start with Council of Four.
Yes, you guys are talking about this at the CMON Expo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Suzanne has been saying how much she loves this game. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it. So I finally got my copy. And this game is designed by Simone Luciani and Danielle Tessini. The artist is Arnaud Demeged and published by Cranio Creations, but most recently CMON, who've brought the newest version out. So general explanation of the game. It's an empire and you're formed by 3 kingdoms, and in each kingdom, it's governed by a council of 4 nobles. So in the game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to stake your claim on different areas of the board and trying to chain the areas that you're in so you can benefit from all the bonuses that are in each of these kind of councils or areas. The game itself is very simple actions. You're trying to acquire tiles that allow you to place in certain areas of the board in order to get these bonuses on the tile and in the area that you're placing. It allows you to use the queen, which allows you to move along the board in order to claim more of these areas. And you have to make sure you're satisfying the council by using these cards that you have, and they're colored according to the miniatures of the council on the board. And you have other actions, like little quick actions that you can use before or after these main actions to kind of help you do these actions a bit faster or more of them in a turn. You have servants that you could use that can help you do that. I know it sounds a bit odd, but the servants are there to assist you with these actions. The person to place out, I think it's their 10th merchant on the board, will trigger end of game. Everyone gets one last turn, and then you count up all of your points. So that's just a general gist of the game. I really liked this game. I looked and I said, okay, it's worker placement. It's right up my alley. I really like that. And then I'm like, it has miniatures. I don't play a lot of miniature games, but I like them. The miniatures are completely unnecessary. Yeah, I said it. But I liked them in there. So you know what? I enjoyed seeing them there. It added to the ambiance and the color of the game. I really liked it. Played within an hour and a half with explanation. Definitely think you should try Council of Four.
Yeah, I like this one as well. I got to play the Cranio Creations version, not the new CMON edition. But I really enjoyed the mechanisms. In the original Cranio, it's just little meeples on like shelves or platforms or something. So I haven't actually taken a look at the Super Deluxe miniatures version.
Okay.
But the system is cool.
It is, and actually, it's funny when you look at it. It looks super complex, but once you start playing it, I'm like, oh no, it's very straightforward. It's just how you do it. So do you go with having majority of a certain color of city so you can get your bonuses, or do you try and fill in a certain area of the board, like if it's the trees or the rocks, to get that bonus? I mean, there are different ways that you can go, and definitely getting them out faster before everybody else is useful, so you're not having to pay out too many of your servants when you want to go in the same area as another player. I did have some issue with the cards. They're really tiny. I don't know if in the version that you have, if they're the same size, but they're like that Takenoko size card. And the colors sometimes are hard to read. Like the blue, I think it's the yellow and the green are pretty straightforward. But once you start getting into the dark black and the blue, even the purple's not bad. But it looks almost very similar to the back of the card. So they're kind of hard to discern. So sometimes you have people playing and they're showing you their cards because they don't realize it's the wrong way.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's Council of Four. I enjoyed it.
Very nice. First up for me is a new game from Tim Fowers and his Fowers Games imprint. It's a real-time cooperative pick-up and deliver game called Now Boarding. All of the players are running an airline, even though you get planes with like different colors on them. You're still working for the same airline. And you are trying to get through 3 waves of passengers, an entire day of passengers, a morning, afternoon, and evening, without having too many of them get disgruntled. You have a map of the U.S., and based on the number of players, you have some cities that won't be part of it. Like if you only have 2 or 3 players, Seattle is not part of the network. But if you're playing with more, you'll have a wider net with all these cities and different paths that connect them. Some of these paths are marked with a specific route marker, like a symbol of an eagle or an A or something. That's sort of a logo of one of the subsidiaries of your airline, which means that only the player that has that symbol on their plane can go on those paths. They're sort of shortcuts. There are general routes that everybody can use that take more spaces to get from place to place, but the shortcuts can only be used by certain players. So it's actually beneficial to take a passenger halfway, drop them off, and have someone else take them somewhere else so they can get them where they're going more efficiently. The way around works is a certain number of these passengers will show up, and they have a listing of where they start and where they want to go and how much they're worth when you get them there. Very simple. And you have a plane that's made up of multiple tiles, sort of modular tiles, that has a certain number of seats. You start with 1, and then a speed. You start with 3 spaces that you can go in around, but you can add more. Also, you have more routes that you can add, more of those symbols that give you the shortcuts. And so you gradually build your plane as you deliver people and spend money and buy more seats, buy more speed, all that stuff, to make your plane better and more efficient. So these guys come out, and then, actually they come out face down. So you can see that there's a passenger in Seattle and Chicago and maybe one at JFK. And so now you discuss, with no timer going on, you can discuss where you generally want to go. But once you flip over all those cards, the timer flips. And if you're playing with 4 or 5 players, it's a 30-second timer. If you're playing with 3 or 2 players, it's a 15-second timer.
Oh, my goodness.
And so now you flip these guys over. Now you see where they want to go, which may change your plan. And you have to take your actions. And so you're moving around the board, dropping off, picking up passengers. That's it. That's all you can do. But 15 seconds, if you're playing with 2 or 3 players, is not a lot of time.
It's not.
To execute your plan. And then, once that is over, the flight phase is done. Anybody that is not on a plane gets angry. And so you take these red cubes and you put them on anybody that's still sitting at the airport. Once you pick up somebody that has the red cubes, they lose those red. They're happy to be moving. Oh, good, I'm not mad anymore because I'm on a plane. But if somebody gets their 4th red cube, they leave to file a complaint. They are disgruntled and they go in the lost forever pile. And if you ever get 3 lost forever customers, the game is lost. So you have to make it through the day without getting to that point. And even at the end of the game, you go, I think, one more turn after all of the passengers have been dealt out. You get one more round to deliver everybody. And everyone who is still not where they want to go, for every 2 of those passengers, you get another disgruntled passenger. So it's possible to do really well, but then because you still haven't quite gotten everybody where they need to go, to just get pushed over the edge at the end of the game. There's also weather that changes from morning to noon to evening that can increase or decrease the length of a route, which sort of messes up your planning, makes some directions more or less efficient as you go. You can buy temporary upgrades that give you just a seat for now that fits, like the little jump seat that the flight attendants use. You can buy that for a round or buy a speed upgrade for a round. It's a neat game. I liked it. I don't know how much I love the speed element. I think that 15 seconds is not a lot of time, and I felt like that was too rushed. I would rather play with a 4-player game and play with a 30-second timer that just gives us a little more breathing room to, yes, you still have to hurry, but you can make a decision about, this situation has changed. Everybody, I'm going to pick up this passenger right now. Because if you're playing with a 15-second timer, that's barely enough time to actually do everything that you planned to do. And there isn't a lot of time to react to anything that's changed during that 15 seconds.
Right.
My only other complaint is that there's a really weird phrasing in the rulebook about what you're able to do during the flight phase. There's some phrase about doing those actions, the flying and picking up or dropping off passengers, as many times as you want during your turn. And it doesn't specifically say up to the distance that your speed is. So we spent our first run of the game, we'd move 3, and then we'd move 3 again, and then we'd move 3 again. Well, as long as the timer's still going, we can keep moving, because it says we can do that as many times as we want, right? And the game was way too easy. We were delivering all of the passengers every round. That's not how that works. You need to increase your speed if you want to move farther in a round. But it's not terribly clear, and a lot of people have been making the same mistake, at least initially. It doesn't make any sense when you make this mistake. And you know something's wrong, but still, we spent an entire game almost doing it wrong and had to reset everything. It is not sort of my top tier of cooperative games, and spoiler alert, it didn't make my top 10 in this episode. But it is fun, and having the challenge of having to make these decisions quickly, it does sort of shut down that alpha player problem, because you only have so much time to deal with it. I did enjoy now boarding. There are also some more difficult passengers. You can add VIP passengers, which add like extra hoops to jump through to deliver people. Plus, you can't leave VIPs sitting around. They have to be picked up that round, or else they just immediately go complain. So we haven't done that yet. Haven't tried that monkey wrench, but we did win when we finally were playing correctly. We did win now boarding. I like it.
I've seen it, and I wasn't sure if I saw it on Kickstarter or maybe it was an S, and I did see it. Was it Kickstarter?
It was a Kickstarter, yes.
It was. Okay, that's where I had seen it. So, I don't know, like, it feels like, is it like a Magic Maze or Captain Sonar feel to it? Because I feel like it sounds stressful.
Stressful. I'd say closer to Magic Maze. Well, Magic Maze has that timer that runs all the time, and so you're constantly you can communicate, you can yell all you want in this game, but you still only have that 15 or 30 seconds to do things. And then you can relax and discuss what just happened. I actually like this element, the time element, this way better than Magic Maze. I like the pressure for a small amount of time.
Right. Then
you can talk and discuss and figure things out. And with Magic Maze, that timer never stops. You can go to the space and flip it, but it doesn't stop. And that is... I don't like that as much as I do the ability to at least take a breather and chill out for a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that would appeal to a lot of people. I do remember seeing it, and I remember liking the art and the theme of the game. I thought that was really neat. And even just some of the things you were talking about, like keeping the VIP waiting, but making sure that they are placed first. Things like that. I think that's really thematic, and I like that. Makes you more interested in the game. So definitely have to check out Now Boarding. Thanks for sharing that, Eric.
You bet.
So the next game that I played was Junk Orbit. So this, I have to disclaimer, it is not out yet, so nobody go crazy. It's coming. I believe it's going to be available at Origins, if I'm not mistaken. And this is designed by Daniel Solis, and art is by Sabessa Bernath, Michelle Garrett, Eric Hibbler, Jin Torres, and this was published by Renegade Game Studios. So let's start off by saying this game is in a very different box. It's actually cylindrical. And this is to hold all the fun tiles and the boards that are modular, because they're going to move around and, well, move around in the sense that you set them up one way for the basic game and then they can change for the advanced game. But in the game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to launch your junk, move your ship, pick up the junk, and deliver. And this is what's going to get you points to win the game. So in the game, when you're launching your junk, they're your tiles that you have, and this is technically the kind of cargo that you want to get once they've been delivered. You're going to take your action piece, and you're going to move it the number of spaces equal to the tile that you're launching. It does take a minute to wrap your head around the movement, because it actually isn't difficult, the game itself, but there's a lot of moving left, right, clockwise. You need to know your directions. So if you're launching your junk to the left, you move to the right around the different orbits. And there are 3 of them on the board, and you can move between the 3 of them. Once you've launched your tile, it goes to, and that space, you go in the opposite direction. And then the space that you land on, you get to take any and all tiles that are on that space and add it to your area for tiles potentially to be delivered at a later time. If you use a tile that matches the space you land on, then you can, that would be like a remote delivery. So it's something you've delivered remotely, but you can also deliver direct by landing on the space of the tile you used. So there are various ways to get it there. That's literally the gist of the game. It goes through a certain amount of rounds. I think it's until one of the stacks for the planets is depleted, and I believe you get one more round to finish any extra deliveries. That's legitimately the game. Everybody has special powers that they can use. For example, I forgot the most important thing. You can attack people. So when I know, that's like, how can I forget this? When you have a tile that's delivered and it lands on a space where another player is, you can attack them, and this forces them to drop one of their cargoes that haven't been delivered yet. So if you want to be really mean, you can attack them. But there are some powers that enable you to attack players even if it doesn't land on their space, but actually goes through where they are. So the different player abilities can change how the game is played with attack, movement, and so forth. So I thought this game was a lot of fun. Just looking at the art, when I saw the box, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. It's different. And I'm a big fan of Daniel Solis games to begin with, so I knew right away this was going to be right up my alley. So I think we played this a couple times with some friends, played it actually lunch hour with a couple of people, so I was actually able to do it in lunch hour. It's on the longer end. But I really liked the simple mechanics of just, pick up, deliver, and attack. That's it. It's super basic, but really effective and a lot of fun. Have you tried this one yet, Eric?
No, not yet. But I've seen some pictures and your description. I like that concept of, in order to move around the board, you have to launch junk.
Yes.
That propels you. I mean, physically, that makes sense. It's inertia. And so if you propel one thing one way, you're going to go the same distance the other way. That's kind of cool. So I'm looking forward to trying this out, hopefully at Origins.
Yeah, I hope I'm not wrong on saying that, but I'm next to positive it will be at Origins. Definitely, it's one that I think you will enjoy. You need to know your directions. Let's just put it that way. I don't know if after a while my brain just wasn't paying attention. I'm like, oh, wait, I launched it this way. No, that doesn't make sense. I have to go this way. So you get used to it, but I enjoyed it. A lot of fun, and that was Junk Orbit.
Cool. I've got a little bit of an older one to share next. It is Longsdale in Revolt, which is an expansion for Oh My Goods. I talked about Oh My Goods a while back, and Tom, I think, has talked about it recently because he recently played with the second edition rules and had a much better experience than he did playing with the first edition rules.
Yay!
Yeah, he liked it a lot. And it's some pretty significant changes. I think it's like 3 major points that are different in the second edition rules of Oh My Goods. Let me back up. It is an Alexander Pfister game. Resource management, it's got these cards that are multiple use. It has a little bit of a pusher luck aspect. It's an engine building game in which you are a certain number of resources are turned up at the beginning of a round in the sunrise phase, and it's based on little symbols that appear on the cards. And that is resources that everybody can use to run their production engine that round. So it might be like just 2 cards that come up, but it might be 8 that show up, and you might be rolling in resources. And you can choose to either collect all the resources that you need to run a particular building and get 2 of a good for doing that, or you can choose to do a sloppy production and only get 1 of the goods, but you don't need, you need 1 fewer resource in order to make the whole thing run. And so then you have a sunset phase where you draw more cards looking for those sun symbols, and once you get 2 of those sun symbols, that phase is done, and that's all the resources you have. If you have a shortfall, you can make it up using cards in your hand that can also act as resources, but those cards are also the buildings that you want to build that can then later get you resources and earn points, and all of the goods are worth money, and you can use that money to buy more buildings and buy assistance and basically get your engine running. In the multiplayer version of Oh My Goods, the game goes until somebody has built their 8th building, and then everybody gets 1 more round and can operate their entire production chain. There's the extra resources that can be produced if a building produces in the normal part of the game. When you have that final round, this is one of the changes to the second edition of the rules, you can just trigger everything. It doesn't matter where your assistants are, where your main character is. You can just run everything and run your whole production chain and really see it come to fruition and earn as many points as possible. And then most points wins. You get to convert your goods into points and all that stuff. What Longsdale in Revolt adds is a story element. And you can play this both multiplayer and what I've been doing is solo. It comes with 5 scenarios, and it tells you what cards to put into an event deck for each chapter of this thing. It tells you what cards to add to the whole system. The things get added to the side, buildings that you can buy just straight from the side as opposed to having to draw them from the deck. And in the solo game, that only plays a certain number of turns. In fact, the regular game, the multiplayer, does this as well. Only a certain number of turns. And in the multiplayer game, you need to collect a certain amount of resources, a certain number of victory points or something, or you lose VP. In the solo game, that's your goal. You need to have collected, in the first chapter, it's specific goods totaling 40 coins and a certain number of victory points and a couple of specific resources. If you don't do that, you have to play Chapter 1 again. I am still playing Chapter 1. I think I've played it 4 times now, and I have yet to get past this. This one is unforgiving. Whereas in the basic game, if you have a really bad production round, like the cards come up and you only get 5 cards and none of them are the resources you were looking for, that's no big deal, because everybody else had a really terrible round too. And because the trigger is someone builds their 8th building, if everyone has a bad round and no one built anything and, it's generally bad for everyone, it just means the game goes another round. But when you're playing this event deck, that's one of the rounds. You only had 10 rounds, and one of those rounds just got destroyed because you didn't get the right draw. And I haven't quite figured out how to mitigate that luck yet. Is the whole thing just done at that point? Or am I just terrible at this game and I don't have a good plan B right now? Because I always choose wrong. When I produce sloppily when I end up having all the resources I need, and then I decide to produce strongly and then I'm short 2 resources and I can't actually do anything. I like it. I'm still fascinated by it. There's a second expansion as well that has another deck of events that I want to play. I'm fascinated, but I'm terrible at Oh My Goods Longsdale in Revolt. I don't know how available this is because this is a Lookout Spiel game, which was distributed by Mayfair, which is no more. I don't know where the Lookout games fall. The Lookout Spiel website, the German site, is still up. And I think you can order them from them, order English versions of these games from them. I don't know how distribution of that is incorporated in the Asmodee purchase of Mayfair. But it is, I think, if you like this sort of game, worth tracking down not only Oh My Goods, but this Longsdale and Revolt expansion.
I'm glad to hear you talk about it because I actually have Oh My Goods and I have both the new expansions. Mm-hmm. and they're still sitting on my shelf. I haven't had a chance to play them yet. I bought them at Essen our last visit.
I did as well, and I just recently said I have to get this to the table and try it out. And I had to refresh myself on all my goods to begin with, but it was nice to finally get them. I'm glad I grabbed them when I did, because I think the second expansion was brand new this past October.
Yes.
But Longsdale and Revolt, I think, is a little harder to come by these days.
No, I think you're 100% right. And actually, there was something on BGG about exactly this, that where were people going to be able to get the games? And I know exactly what you said. The website was still there that was selling it, but I don't even know if they still had any of the copies left, but they were looking into possible solutions, but I don't think any have come to fruition as of yet.
Anyway, all my goods, Longsdale and Revolt.
All right, well, that makes me really want to get mine to the table, but my last game that I played this week was Drop It, and I know that I think Suzanne and Eric potentially may have discussed this already, but I haven't played it yet, so I'm like, we'll give it a chance and talk about it. So Drop It is designed by Bernhard Locke and Uwe Rapp, and it's published by 999 Games and Cosmos. So Drop It, I have to admit, I looked and I said, oh dear, I don't know if this is going to be my type of game. Looks party-esque, and that's generally not something I enjoy, but give it a shot. So in Drop It, it has a couple of modes. I'm going to speak specifically in regards to the initial mode they discuss. You have this kind of structure that you set up when you first get the game. And in the game, all the players are going to be assigned different colors. So there's, I think, red, yellow, blue, and green. And the goal of the game is to try and acquire as many points as you can by dropping these shapes in this structure and try to make sure that you get the really high point values and have the most points. That's where we're going. In the game, there are some restrictions. So in this structure, on the bottom of the structure, there are some kind of squares that say you cannot have circles that touch this part at the bottom, or you cannot have the diamond shapes touch this, or the squares touch this part. And then you also have the side panels where it has similar restrictions. Maybe on this level here, you can't have the circle touching the side, and so forth. Also, you'll have these little kind of translucent circles on the kind of, I don't know if it's like a plastic that holds everything together. And when your shape touches these little circles, you can get additional points. Okay, and in addition to the points you're going to receive from dropping your shape in and not touching the edge with the wrong shapes. Not only do you have to worry about these restrictions, you also have to worry about touching similar shapes from other players that are in there. So two squares can't touch. And you also can't touch your colors together. So you could have a square and a circle, but they're your colors, they can't touch. So when you're dropping these shapes in, it's hard because you have so many things that you cannot do. If you are successful, you get the points of the level that you're at, so the sides will tell you, and then any bonuses based on the size of circles in that plastic that you're able to touch. So you play that until all players have expended all of their shapes, and then you count the points. Players with the highest points wins. That's the basic version, but there are some variants where you can have these little smiley faces that allow you to kind of get rid of it if you want to score something that would not have initially scored due to breaking the rules from some of the things that I had mentioned earlier, or playing with color restrictions versus shape restrictions. We have had so much fun with this game. I have brought it out to so many game nights. Everybody loves it. There's some crazy things that happen with the shapes, like, oh, how's it staying like that? It's not touching their shape. It's just, it blows everyone's mind how simple it is, but how much fun it is. I do have issues with the color because it really is not great for people who are colorblind. So I'm hoping that's something they look at fixing in the future. And it's a very simple fix, whether it's just lettering or labeling. But right now, it definitely would be a hard one. I think it's a lot of fun. We've been playing it a lot, and I've been teaching it at game events, and I think it's a really smart, fun, simple game. So that's Drop It.
Yeah, I agree. My family really enjoys it. We picked up a copy for ourselves, and it has nice table presence. I think this one's going to be a big family hit in the next year or so.
Absolutely.
So last for me is a roll and write game. You think Suzanne's going to be mad that I'm talking about a roll and write game before she gets a chance to talk about it?
Oh, absolutely not. Because actually, I have this one that she had recommended to me, so I think she'll be happy that you're talking about it.
All right. This is from Grail Games. It's a game by Reiner Knizia called Criss Cross. This comes in a nice tiny box. Grail Games has sort of a line of square games that are way thicker than this. This is a nice thin box, maybe 3 inches square, something like that. It is a roll and write game. Not a lot in the box either. It just has 2 custom dice that have different symbols on them, like a circle and an X and a slash and a number sign, an octothorpe. I think that's what it's called. Some pencils and a bunch of score sheets. And the score sheet is a grid, basically a 5x5 grid. There's also like a shaded diagonal across one side that's used in the advanced mode, and then some scoring spaces around the outside. Everybody takes a scoring sheet and a pencil and then chooses one symbol to be the corner, so everyone starts with a slightly different board. So if I choose the triangle to be in my corner, you can't choose the triangle, Mandy. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And then you take turns rolling the dice. And it's just a single roll, so you end up with 2 symbols, and then you need to place those 2 symbols on your board. But those symbols have to be placed like a domino, basically. They have to be next to each other. They don't have to be next to other symbols you have on your board. They could be placed anywhere as long as the 2 that were just rolled are together. And this continues. That's the game. You continue rolling and placing symbols until you have filled your board, which everyone will do at the same time. And then you score based on the rows and columns on the grid. If you manage to get 2 like symbols next to each other, that's 2 points. If you get 3 next to each other, that's 3 points. Then if you get 4 next to each other, that's 8 points. Or 5, if you fill up the entire row with the same symbol, that's 10 points. Then there's an advanced version. So you're also scoring both rows and columns in the basic game, and you total it up. In the advanced game, there's that shaded diagonal that scores double, so you can earn points that way. But also the downside to playing the advanced game is that if you score what would be a 0 in the basic game, it's actually a -5 in the advanced game. But that's it. The whole game lasts maybe 10 minutes. I think the box says 10 to 15, I think. No, 10 minutes it says. So it's right on target. And I mean, this one is so simple. We talk about roll and writes being generally very simple and quick games. This is about as quick and simple as it gets. And I think for me, this might be a little too shallow. I mean, there's decisions for sure. Where do I place stuff? But because it's dice, you don't really know what's coming up. You have no sense of how many triangles there will be in this round. So you're just hoping that maybe triangles come up again and saving a space for them. Yeah, it's light, it's simple, it's certainly very easy to teach. I could throw this together and play it with any number of people in 30 seconds. But I don't think it's one I'm going to bring out a lot. I think I would probably rather bring out Can't Stop Express. That's just a little bit deeper, even though that one's still pretty light as well. If you're looking for a really light, simple game that can be played in any amount of time, 10 minutes is pretty fast. Criss Cross is well worth a look, but for me, I don't think this is going to see a lot of table time.
Oh, no. It's funny, because I think I have Criss Cross, but the version I have is from Germany, so it's spelled differently. It's Criss Cross with K's. So I'm wondering if it's the same game, actually.
I don't know. Is it Knizia as well?
You know what? I just pulled out the box. It's actually, I wish I had it sitting here so I can double check, but it's one I'm going to have to check, and I'm definitely going to talk about it in another podcast because it sounds very similar from what you're describing on the box. I haven't even opened it yet. But yeah, now I'm wondering if maybe it's just a totally different game, but it's interesting that it has the same title because it is a roll and write.
Interesting. I don't know if spelling makes a difference. It's Criss with 2 S's and Cross with 2 S's.
Right. From
Grail Games. Yeah, this one is brand new. I think this one just came out.
Oh, I'm looking it up, and it is actually side by side with it's a different imagery, actually. But it is with the same game, so it is the same game.
There you go. So, Mandy, you are a former teacher.
Yes.
Did you ever teach calculus?
Oh, goodness, no.
Because Mr. Engelstein is about to give us a lesson.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for GameTek with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
During the development of the video game Diablo, the developers hit a wall. It was a turn-based game, and each turn the player got action points that they could use to move, attack monsters, cast spells, and more. Then the monsters got their turn, and they also got a number of action points to use. It worked great, and people really enjoyed it, but the developers thought it could be better, and they played with a bunch of different parameters. But the thing that seemed to make the most difference was reducing the number of action points for each turn. The developers kept reducing the number of action points until finally someone said, what if we got rid of them altogether and just made it real time? And in a feverish code hack, one of the developers worked all night and mocked up a demo that basically set the number of action points to 0 and strung the actions together continuously, although the turn-based engine was still running in the background, just with really fast, really short turns. And it worked amazingly well. The rest, as they say, is history. Now, I love this story for a few reasons. First, it's a great example of designers questioning and challenging even the most basic assumptions about their game. They'd spent years developing and honing the turn-based system, carefully tuning all the parameters. It was the entire basis for the game and a foundational part of the initial design vision. Yet, they were able to put even that on the table and see if they could make things better. Now, speaking from experience, it's an incredibly hard thing to do, so I give them tremendous credit. But I mainly like this story because it perfectly describes the invention of calculus in the mid-1600s. I am so much fun at cocktail parties, you cannot even begin to imagine. Now, there were two fundamental problems that calculus was developed to solve. One was figuring out the area under a curve, and the second was figuring out the slope of a curve at any point. And they were both tackled the same way, by starting with coarse approximations and gradually making them better and better and better. So let's take a look at the slope of a curve problem first. Picture an XY grid and a curve that goes from left to right and bounces up and down. If we pick a single point on that curve, how can we figure out the slope right there? How quickly is the curve going up or down? One way to do this is by approximating the curve right around that point as a line. It's easy to figure out the slope of a line. It's just the amount it changes in the y direction divided by the amount it changes in the x direction. So let's create a line around that point. Let's say we want to figure out the slope at x equals 4. We can draw a line from where the curve is at x equals 3 to where it is at x equals 5 and just connect those dots and figure out the slope of the line. Now obviously that isn't going to be exactly right, but for smooth curves it should be pretty much in the ballpark, but we can improve it. We can move the two ends of the line closer together. Instead of going from 3 to 5, we can go from 3.5 to 4.5. Better, but still not perfect. So maybe we go from 3.9 to 4.1, then 3.99 to 4.01. As we make our line shorter and shorter, we get closer and closer to the actual slope at exactly x equals 4. This is called a limit. The slope of the curve at x equals 4 is the limit of the slope of that line as it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And that's what calculus is. It's a way that we can determine a formula to figure out the result of that limit, rather than have to go through all those calculations. And that's called the derivative of the curve. The area under a curve idea is very similar, except in this case, we stack a series of vertical rectangles under the curve to figure out the area. Let's say we're trying to calculate the area between x equals 0 and x equals 4. We can make 4 rectangles, from 0 to 1, from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, and from 3 to 4. For each one, we make the height equal to the height of the curve at the center of the rectangle. Add up those 4 rectangles, and you get pretty close to the area. But if you shrink the width of those rectangles and jam more of them between 0 and 4, you get closer and closer to the exact value. And again, calculus helps us determine a formula for what that area is, rather than have to create a whole series of super skinny rectangles. And that's called the integral. So, by reducing the number of action points they were giving the players, the designers of Diablo made their game closer and closer approximation to a real-time game, until finally they went all the way and reduced the turn size to essentially 0. Now, in reality, in a computer game, there's still a really small turn size, as the computer is still calculating what is going on in a frame-by-frame basis, maybe 100 times in a second. So, real-time and turn-based really are on a continuum in a computer game. And board games also operate on this scale. In the 70s and 80s, many games had extremely long player turns, particularly the more complex hobby games like war games. Then over the years, the duration of those turns shortened, as designers saw the benefit of keeping players engaged. The ultimate end of reducing turn length is a real-time board game. In my game, The Ares Project, players play one card on their turn and then draw, and most of those turns, once you learn the game, are very, very quick, like 2, 3, 4 seconds quick. So it almost feels like a real-time game, which is what we wanted. In fact, we actually tried to play it as a real-time game once and take that extra step, but that final last leap did not work out. Playing fast always beat playing smart, and we decided not to try to fix that and just went back to the old system. Our head-to-head real-time game would wait until Space Cadets Dice Duel, where we learned how to build enough delay and options into the system to reward tactics and strategy over speed. Now, if you didn't have the chance to encounter calculus in high school or college, there are plenty of great resources online like videos. Even just understanding the principles without getting down and dirty with the equations will give you a deeper appreciation for the world. This is Geoff Engelstein with GameTek.
So, I'm not sure, but I think that was just a really long commercial for calculus.
This is good. It brings back some memories.
I think so. No, it's also an interesting point that Geoff made about the time between turns decreasing. It used to be that, people were fine with a few minutes in between turns, but now anytime you have to sit there without something to do for more than 5 minutes, people complain about downtime. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's an issue? Are games becoming quicker to have you active more often?
I think so. And I think that's reflective of society, right? Nobody wants to wait for anything. It needs to be now, right away. And I definitely think that's something, that's a real thing.
It's going to be all real-time games before you know it.
Oh no, don't say that.
All right, let's get to some questions.
All right.
Mr. Vassal. Tom, can you comment on the latest Essen releases?
Where do you keep all your ties?
If I threw water at you during a game, would you yell at me? And now the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the bathroom?
John from Indiana starts us off by saying, after listening to the store owner in March talk about their used game sale, and the person who wrote in suggesting the view of purchasing a game as a rental, I've decided I'd like to sell some of my games. I live in a rural area, but would be willing to ship my games. What is the best way to do this? I would also be willing to buy older games at a reduced price to try them out and think that a good marketplace would be useful. So, my stock answer when somebody's wanting to get rid of some games is to find a local convention and do a no-ship auction or a no-ship math trade, which saves you on postage and allows you to make these game exchanges in one area. So I save up ones for ConCon, my local convention here in Connecticut, or Falcon, same thing. And it just makes it easier than trying to ship all this stuff out. But if you are willing to deal with the post office and the shipping, you can go the route of eBay, which is, I think, more work, but you tend to get slightly higher prices. Or you can list them in the marketplace of Board Game Geek, which you have people who are a little more savvy and not quite as willing to pay higher prices for the games. But if you have something that is truly rare, you might do better on Board Game Geek because people know how valuable it is. It's sort of a weird, trade-off. I think eBay is faster because you can set up an auction and know that they're going to end on a certain date, and then you can ship out all your games at once, as opposed to throwing stuff up in the marketplace and hoping somebody buys them. I guess you do end up getting a little bit more money out of Board Game Geek if I'm thinking about it correctly. Either way, though, you have to go to the post office, and I dislike doing that.
I too hate the post office. In Canada, I think it's a little different. I don't know how it works with Board Game Geek. I think would be more expensive for us, potentially. But I think all the things you said, Eric, are 100% the way to go. I know sometimes I'll do what you said with the local cons. I've done that, and they actually do it's almost like consignment. Mm-hmm. And they'll kind of, they'll sell it for you, actually. And then they just take a percentage. Okay. So, and that works quite well.
I've heard of some game stores doing that, some local game stores doing that, and I don't know how successful it is. I don't think I've talked to an owner of a store that does that.
Okay.
But that always sounds like a neat idea too. I guess the worry is that would undercut the sales of their new games. They wouldn't want to do that too often.
That's also very true. 100%.
Yeah. Doing a math trade might be a good option for you, John. Then everybody's paying the shipping. It's so you're not feeling like you're the one always doing the shipping. Mm-hmm. And then you can sometimes trade multiple games, or, trade one that you're definitely not playing for one that you are potentially going to play. and everybody is in there looking for something new to try, so you're not paying extra money. You're just trading one of the games you have and paying for the shipping. Those are worth checking out as well.
Yep, some great ideas. So we next have a question from Alex. And Alex says, I recently moved, and upon arriving in this new town, I quickly set out a game group. I enjoy playing with them, but they're always trying out new or unplayed things. Games that I like are not often brought back unless they're filler games to play while we wait for people to show up. I've tried bringing games to the group, but they're almost never played since everyone already knows them and is always wanting to play new things. Any advice for getting games to the table for replay, especially as the newest member of the group? Wow, I am probably the worst person to answer this because I'm that person that brings new games all the time.
Yeah.
But I will, definitely, I would love to play games more often. I just have so many to get through. So I think if you introduce a game and maybe kind of come to it and say, this is something I really want to play and I really want to get to know it better, and maybe have that kind of positive attitude going in, you might be more inclined to get people to want to try and play it again, or potentially playing with different people within the group. I know I'll do that with my game group. I'll play with one group, and then the next time I go, or the next, maybe even the same night, I'll try playing the game with a different group versus sticking with the same group. I don't know. What do you think, Eric?
Well, it sounds like this group is interesting and probably doesn't have a ton of turnover. If a particular new game has been already played by everyone, I would think that a new game may have been played by one table, but there must be somebody else in the group that hasn't played it yet, which could help it cycle back through. You really need to find an ally that wants to play some of the older stuff as well. To get those to the table. Sometimes you can have one table that's playing the new thing and then another table that's playing a classic or a favorite. Right. I'm fortunate in that my group goes both ways. I'm always the one bringing the new stuff as well, but because of our pick list system where we sort of rotate whose turn it is to pick something, there are players who want to play stuff they know. And so they, when it's their turn to pick, go in the back room and say, ooh, this hasn't hit the table in a while. Let's bring out the Gates of Loyang, or let's bring out Ra. Let's bring out something that we haven't seen at the table in a while. And so we do get that cycling of stuff that we've seen before, as well as the brand new stuff. But you have to get that agreement that there are other people in the group that want that as well. One thing that did work, we tried at one point, was the unloved list, where our game group owner looked at his collection, the stuff that hadn't been hitting the table, and said, well, first thing this week, or like one evening a month, we'd start things off with one of these unloved games and try something that hadn't hit the table in a while to sort of cycle those older games back through, almost as a decision point. Do people still want this in the collection? Do I still want this around if no one's going to play it? Otherwise, I'm going to put it on the trade list and ship it to someone who does.
Right.
So that could work. But you're right, Alex. As the new player, the new person in the group, you need to find an ally that's going to want to play some of these older ones as well. Keep playing them, or keep bringing them to try and get them to the table. Don't give up, because at some point somebody's going to say, hey, Alex, what do you want to play?
Yep, absolutely.
Mateo is looking for a board game that works like Dungeons & Dragons, Cyberpunk 2020, Pathfinder, etc., but being a board game can be played without a GM. Does anything like that exist? Alternatively, or additionally, do you have any Cyberpunk board games that aren't TCGs, which is all I seem to be able to find that is Cyberpunk themed, to recommend? Well, there's Android. So Android Netrunner is based on the universe of Android. I have no idea how easy it is to get Android, the original board game from Fantasy Flight, but that is a cyberpunk themed. The game I talked about 2 weeks ago, the cooperative deck builder, Renegade, is a cyberpunk themed co-op. As far as the role-playing style game, I really don't know. I don't think there's one that plays like, say, the Dungeons & Dragons games, or like Descent, that is a cyberpunk style. I guess Spectre Ops kind of comes to mind, but again, that's a totally different style of game. That is not a dungeon crawl. That's more just a thematic connection. That's a hide-and-seek game. That's pretty cool.
Right.
Mandy, you got anything to help on this one?
I know we were talking about it, and I know this is a horrible thing, but I got nothing. This is a realm that I am not 100% familiar with.
Yeah. The Mateo's first question, I think we've got a couple of suggestions for his second question, but the first one, I think we need help. Folks on the guild, on Board Game Geek, the Dice Tower Guild, can you think of a board game that is similar to the Dungeons & Dragons adventure games, but is a cyberpunk, non-GM based game? I don't have one that comes to mind.
So our next question comes to us from Rick in Nottingham. I love that, by the way.
Nottingham,
We've recently been through a bit of a rough patch, and some very kind friends in our church home group who know we like board games bought us Camel Up as a gift. We already have it and have played it before with the rest of our home group. Should we tell them and hope they won't be upset, or trade it and hope they never notice this timeline discrepancy when other group members say, hey, let's play that camel game? So it's actually very cute. I think it's amazing that you're so concerned that, they would be, slighted by it if you tell them, oh, we already have it, we've already played it. But I think in this case, I think it's a lovely gesture. They gave it to you as a gift. I absolutely think it's always nice to be honest and say, wow, this is such a kind gesture. We actually, we own it, or we've played it, or whatever the circumstance may be. But, that goes to show what great taste you have. So give them a nice compliment. And then you can either keep the game if you want it, or even potentially add it to, if they're okay with it, as something that they can keep at the church, maybe that everyone can play. I know this is something very similar has happened to myself, and I was just very open and honest. And it worked out that, yes, the game was something that everybody can use, and we actually use it as something toward the church library of games. So I think, in my opinion, that would be something that I would do if you're comfortable enough to do that. What do you think, Eric?
Oh, I totally agree. In fact, I hadn't gone the extra leap to say don't donate to the church library. I think that would be an excellent idea. I'm sure the youth group would enjoy playing it. And being honest and saying thank you, being grateful for one thing. Thank you so much. We do have this one, but hey, since we now have two, why don't we donate this to the church? That would be a great idea. Yep. I think that's great. They would. I'm sure. How would they know if you had it already? And it's still a kind gesture that you can be appreciative of. I think that's fine.
Absolutely.
So that is the end of our questions. Tom sent these questions along with a giant bold statement that says, "We need questions." So if you have something you'd like us to discuss, you can send it to us at dicetower@gmail.com, or you can use our super deluxe dicetower.com email addresses, which would be eric@dicetower.com, or Mandy with an I at dicetower.com, or heck, you can add Tom at dicetower.com as well. I guess he shows up every once in a while on the show.
Yeah, once in a while.
All right, time to get amazed. Tales of Amazement. I've been playing board games with my recently turned 6-year-old son, Michael, for quite some time. In addition to expected children's games like Rhino Hero and Catan Jr., I've also played games with him that are ostensibly above his age level. We've played Ticket to Ride. He has to have markers placed on the board to tell him which cities he needs to connect. Memoir 44. Without any of the special event cards, since those require reading, and cooperative games like Forbidden Island or Forbidden Desert and Pandemic. Co-op games work really well with him since most of the time there is no hidden information, and I can freely coach Michael on his turn about the rules and strategy without undermining the gameplay itself. One of Michael's favorite games is Forbidden Desert, in part because he loves exploring the desert tiles and trying to find the missing pieces for the airship. Michael is in preschool, and they have periodic share days, basically show and tell, where each student can bring in an item, like a toy, have an opportunity to show it to the rest of the class, and then afterwards there is some time for students to ask to play with the toy or item brought in by others. A couple of weeks ago, Michael had a share day coming up, and I was surprised to hear from my wife that he wanted to bring Forbidden Desert. To her shock, I said yes. I'm normally very protective of my games, but I figured that Forbidden Desert was inexpensive enough to replace, and the likely casualties would be the pieces of the airship, which, while a nice visual, aren't per se necessary for playing the game. So Michael was sent off happily to share day with Forbidden Desert in tow. I figured that in all likelihood what would happen is that the other students, and likely Michael himself, would really just want to play with the ship and ignore the game itself. So I was naturally astounded and delighted to hear the report from my wife when I came home that night. When my wife had gone to pick him up from preschool, Michael's teacher had come out and proceeded to gush about how Michael had not only explained to the whole class what Forbidden Desert was, but proceeded to gather up a group of 4 other students and fully teach them the game and play it with them. His teacher was beyond impressed, since she could see that the group was well under the recommended age limit, and by how well he understood and was able to explain the rules. She even said that she had made a mental note to actually buy the game herself and try it and see if it might be a good addition to the classroom. I myself was amazed and proud, since while Michael did understand the basic mechanics, I didn't think he understood enough of the game to actually teach someone else. That was a good day. Huzzah! I'm impressed. That's pretty cool for a 6-year-old, especially preschool, and being able to take that role as a leader and teach. I've seen, I don't know if I've seen the teaching aspect in my 6-year-old, but I have seen that once they get the game down, they can do a pretty good job running it on their own, especially with a game like Forbidden Desert.
I totally agree, and I've seen it in action where I was teaching a game, and there was this young child, and his parents were like, "Oh no, we don't want him to bother you." I'm like, "No, let him hang out." And listen, by after a round or two, he was teaching the game, and he was involving everyone. And I think when they have that feeling, it makes them very confident, and like, hey, I can do this, and I can make other people happy and bring them in and teach them. I love it, and I just love the look in their face that they're so happy that they get to do some adulting, I guess.
Yeah. Well, an excellent point about co-op games and how great they are for getting kids into gaming. You know what? Let's do a top 10 about that very subject, shall we?
Woohoo! Absolutely.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
All right, I am very excited about this top 10 list. I don't know if it's obvious, Mandi, but co-op games are one of my favorites. This is something that I can play with my whole family. My wife loves cooperative games. My kids sometimes exclusively want to play cooperative games. And so this was a tough list for me to put together. How about you?
So it was a tough list for me to put together, but for very different reasons.
Yeah.
I love co-ops, but apparently I do not play as many as I thought I did. I had a really hard time coming up with 10.
Well, all right. I had a bunch, like a whole. Usually I do it on like one small sheet of paper to make my short list, and I had to go front and then back and then keep flipping back and forth. Which one did I miss? I missed this one. I got to put this one on the list. I could probably have done another 10 at least of games I really enjoy. So this was tough. And the last time that Tom and I did this list was in April of 2015. So it's been over 3 years since we visited this topic. And a few of my top 10 are not on the list this time, like Defenders of the Realm, which is a very cool fantasy-themed, very pandemic-like, but also quite different, using an action point system and special powers for stuff. It's a neat game, but just didn't make the cut this time. Mysterium was on my list before. I still love that game, but it just hasn't hit the table a lot lately. And a couple more that you might mention, so we'll get to that when we get to that. But this was tricky, but we've worked together and we have assembled our lists. Are you ready to go, Mandi?
Oh, I'm ready. Hopefully people are not disappointed.
Nah. Now we're all working together here.
Okay.
Let's start it up.
Number 10.
My number 10 is the new dice rolling cooperative game Fuse from Renegade Games. You are rolling these dice, like you draw them from a bag and roll them out, and then everybody has to quickly draft them because the whole thing is like 10 minutes long. The whole game is 10 minutes. And so you have to make decisions quickly. I need this die. No, I need this die. And you're trying to combine them into different combinations on your cards to complete the cards, complete sort of these puzzles, and score them and get through the stack before time runs out. And that can get tricky. It's a tough game, but I like that twist on the co-op. Fuse, my number 10.
That's definitely a good one. I like it. All right. My number 10 is Legendary Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I know what you're thinking. It is a slight cheat because it's semi-cooperative, but in this game, I'm a huge Buffy fan, so this had to be my number 10. The Scooby Gang is trying to stop the big bad, and this is a deck builder, so you're really trying to amp up your deck in order to beat the big bad and any other kind of vampire that comes along your line of cards, and you definitely want to kill them off before they take off with innocent bystanders or anybody else that could be killed in the game. So in the game, you're working together, but really, in the end, you want to be the one that gets that final defeat because you want to win, hence the semi-cooperative portion of the game. So that's the general gist of it. I actually think I really like this game more for the theme than the actual game mechanics, but it's simple enough to learn and play, and heck, it's Buffy. Gotta love it. So my number 10, Legendary Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, Mandy, I had this in my cart at Cool Stuff Inc. and set it aside. And because I didn't have a full order, I was still working on stuff. And when I just came back, because I ordered the new Unlock games, and I said, well, I'll get Buffy too. It's out of stock now. And
is it really?
I may have missed it. I hope I haven't missed it for good. I do still want to play it because I know there's some new mechanics with like light, dark stuff going on. And I want to play it, but I missed it, at least for a little while.
We need to get you a copy. This is going to happen.
Okay, fingers crossed.
Okay.
Number 9.
My number 9 I have talked about an awful lot, but it has been a huge hit in our family. That's Stuffed Fables, the Plaid Hat game storytelling game about the stuffed animals that come to life. Terrific for playing with kids and families, but I like the teaming up. I mean, what makes a good co-op game for me is that you can work together. Not just that you all have the same goal, but that you can help each other in cool ways. And Stuffed Fables has ways that you can give dice to other players, give stuffing to other players, really help each other out, make sure everyone's protected when bad guys are coming. It feels like you're a team and really pulling together to get the job done, which is why Stuffed Fables is my number 9.
I had this in my cart, and my friend said, "Isn't that a kid's game?" And I said, "Oh, is it?" And then I removed it from my cart.
It's not. I mean, you'd enjoy it.
Okay. I'm going to have to try it, or at least get you to maybe show me a little bit about it, because it sounds really fun, and it looks super cute.
Yeah, it is.
Amazing. So my number 9 is Dead of Winter. I know. You're all saying, oh, everybody knows this one. Well, there's a reason, because it's so good. So in Dead of Winter, as I'm sure a lot of you know, cooperatively, we're trying to save our colony or keep our colony alive, as well as potential survivors that may come into our colony. And basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to go to the different locations, we're trying to equip ourselves, we're trying to get supplies, we're trying to stay fed, try to stave off any type of zombies from taking us over, and we're all trying to meet the goal or objective of the game to win, while keeping morale high, which is quite difficult sometimes. This game does have what's the word I'm looking for? You can have someone who is that secret betrayer, but you can play without that as well. This is actually one of the first cooperative games that my friends would actually play and liked. But I love this game. I love playing it on extra hard with all the extra zombies. That's Dead of Winter.
And the app is cool too.
I can't get it to work on my phone.
What?
It doesn't. It seems to be super glitchy on my phone, so I don't know if it's something going on with my phone, but I've tried. It just doesn't work. I know.
That's frustrating. I should talk to those people. So I had to make rules when I made my list, and in order to have any chance of whittling these lists down, I kept anything with a traitor mechanism off the list. All of mine are pure co-ops. Dead of Winter is very cool. But I had to come up with criteria, and so I left Dead of Winter off. It was my number 7 when we did the list 3 years ago, though.
Ah, okay, so close.
Number 8.
Number 8 is a variant of a non-cooperative game. It is an expansion for Orléans, which is the Invasion expansion, which adds a co-op mode where everybody is still building their bag and trying to tweak their deck, their bag of tokens. But also you have to keep contributing resources to this collective pool to defend the city, put people on the wall, to stockpile resources, do all sorts of stuff in order to survive a certain number of turns. And so the cooperative nature comes with, well, I'm going to tweak my bag to do this really well. So I really need to get these buildings. You guys okay with those? I really want that building too because I'm doing this. And you have to sort of argue over what people are going to buy, how to work together. I have no chance of getting those resources to stockpile those. That's okay. I'm working on that. And everybody has to sort of tune their engine to the group's goal. And I almost think I prefer the co-op invasion mode to the regular game.
Really?
It's why it's my number 8. Orléans Invasion, number 8.
I have this game. I've played it a couple of times, and I enjoyed it when I played it. But again, it's really hard for me to get to play with people who are into cooperative games. But I actually really liked the original Orléans, but then I enjoyed the cooperative aspect as well. And I don't know. It's one I'd like to get back to the table again. So I'm glad to see it on your list. So maybe we can set up a date and you can teach it to me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, exciting. My number 8 is Spirit Island. So Spirit Island is definitely more on the complex spectrum. Very thematic, and it's about defending your island from the colonizing invaders. So players are actually the different spirits of the land, and each of us would have our unique elemental powers. Definitely when you're starting to play this game, you want to play with the basic ones because they can get pretty complex. On turns, players are going to choose the power cards they want to play, and you use energy, which is almost kind of like currency in this game. And you want to use your combinations of your cards. There's little power symbols on the side, which will help you kind of get rid of some of these colonizing elements that are in the game. It goes through a variety of rounds. You're doing this collectively, trying to get rid of any kind of plague or any kind of colonizers or any kind of attacks on buildings. You were trying to do this together, and it can get quite... what's the word? You can get quite overrun by the amount of colonizers coming into the game, especially if you're not getting rid of them fast enough. So you definitely want to increase the abilities in your deck for your spirit in order to help work as a team to get rid of the colonizers and other outside elements. This game is crazy hard, a lot of fun. You just definitely have to spend the time going through it as a group. But Spirit Island, top of the list for me at number 8.
Yeah, this is one I have not had a chance to try, but the theme sounds really cool.
I think you would really enjoy it.
Number 7.
My number 7 was my number 9 3 years ago. That is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. What I really like about this firefighting game is again that team aspect. Everybody has their forte, their specialization that they're really good at, and you have to use those to plan your attack into the building. There are some characters who are good at physically fighting the fire, but there are others that are better at moving tokens around the board or driving the truck. You've got this truck that can squirt water in different quadrants of the buildings, and you really need to make this tactical plan of here's the situation of the fire, who is best to do these various things. And it really feels like you're a team that has arrived on the scene, and you have to roll with the punches as fire is very unpredictable. Neat one. I haven't played this with the kids. I need to play this with my kids. Flashpoint Fire Rescue, my number 7.
I heard this was a tough one. So is that true?
It can be. Well, it's a little more unpredictable than some of these other co-ops because it's dice-based. Like the fire can flare up generally anywhere. If you get a really weird dice roll, suddenly you've got fire in an area of the building that no one is in, and you have to respond to that. You can't necessarily say that this area is where the hotspot... I mean, there is a hotspot mechanic that has the fire showing up again and again in those zones, but it's still possible for the fire to jump all over the place. And so it's a little more unpredictable than some other co-ops.
Okay, I've definitely heard great things, so something else to add to my list.
Mm-hmm.
My number 7 is Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. So I still have the original version. I know there's been new art since then, but it's, as far as I know, basically the same gameplay. In Robinson Crusoe, you're on a deserted island, and you're playing the parts of shipwreck survivors, and you're basically going on an adventure. You'll face challenges such as building a shelter, finding food, fighting wild beasts, and protecting yourself from weather changes. This game is so tough and so hard, but I loved it. And I think it was the first or second time we played it, we were actually able to win that particular scenario. But goodness gracious, it is definitely a game of survival. And if you win, it is truly, truly a heartfelt win because you feel it. So my number 7, Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island.
Yeah, I also have the original version, the Z-Man edition of this, and it was my number 4 3 years ago. I have yet to win this game.
Oh, like any of the...
Any. I haven't gone past the first scenario.
Okay.
The first scenario, building the fire, I have not completed it. And then it comes back and we try it again, and then it goes away for a while. And at this point, I'm sorry, you're off the list, Robinson, because I can't beat you. It's still a really neat game, but
sure.
and it's definitely it's a push your luck mechanic that I just can't master. We just talked about how I can't quite find the right balance of when to risk and when to not.
Right.
And I just can't find that. It's still probably in the second 10. It's probably in the low teens. But there are other ones that I actually have a chance of winning right now that I've put farther up on the list.
Poor Robinson Crusoe. You have to bring it back. We'll have to try it together one time.
Yes.
Okay.
Number 6.
My number 6 is going to show up on Mandy's list. Plus, I just got this letter that says I'm not allowed to practice magic until a couple of turns from now, so... I'll just wait.
Well then, my number 6 is Elder Sign. So again, another one that's been around for a long time. I play the app so much, but it's basically, if you're familiar with the whole Elder Sign, oh my goodness, I'm thinking of video games here.
Arkham Horror.
Any of the Arkham series, things like that, you'll be familiar with this. It's a cooperative dice game. I know, I love my dice. And it definitely has that supernatural feel. And in the game, players are taking roles of investigators, and you're racing against time, because it is a bit of a time element here, to stave off the return of the Ancient One. Everyone is armed with you've got your tools, your allies, and you've got some knowledge, and basically you've got your sanity and your stamina, and you need to work together to make sure you keep those things in order to make it to the end. But you do have some obstacles throughout the game, trying to keep yourself alive and sane. This is a game that I've played several times. I own the app. I play it quite a bit, still to this day. One of my favorites, and it's a great one to teach. And it has dice. I know people are hard on dice, but I like it in this game. So that is Elder Sign.
Elder Sign's a neat one. I'm not a huge fan of the Cthulhu mythos theme, but it's mechanically solid. It's another push your luck one, but one that if you fail can get pretty punishing. But it's neat. I've enjoyed the few times I've played.
Yeah, quite fun.
Number 5.
My number 5 has shown up on many of my lists. That's the Pathfinder Adventure card game. I still am just enjoying my base box, Rise of the Rune Lords, the first set. I have all of the decks, and I'm still working my way through them. I love it. I just don't play it as often as I'd like. It is a little bit of a bear to set up the various decks each time you have a new encounter. I like to set up my next game before I put away the current game. Like I'll play through, and if I'm successful, I'll set up the next adventure so that it's put away ready to play when I play again. But, the cooperative nature of this, I always like when you can do things that help each other on their turns, and you can certainly do that here using your own weapons. If you're next to someone that's taking their action, you can often help them, spend dice, add dice to their rolls, and use your character's abilities to help each other out in interesting ways, and how those all mesh together with the various scenarios is really cool. I love the clockwork of Pathfinder, the adventure card game. My number 5. It was my number 6 last time, too.
Oh, okay, fantastic. I actually had all the decks, and it was a game my brothers played quite a bit. Wasn't one that I got into as much, but I'm definitely familiar with it. So basically, whoever has my set got an amazing deal on it.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I just didn't have the time. It was the time.
Yeah. It's a big box, too.
Very big. So I hope they're enjoying it because it looks like a fun one. Number 5 for me, well, this sounds familiar. Some magical instances with Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. So if you were a fan of Harry Potter, I think this is a game you definitely need to try because, it's fun and it's cooperative and, well, it has Harry Potter and his friends. It's a deck building game. And it plays up to 4, so you'll have 4 of the characters in there. I think there's Neville and there's Hermione. And so, familiar with the characters that are in the actual movie. Basically, they're trying to keep Hogwarts safe because it's being overrun by villains. And you want to use your cards and build up your deck in order to fight the different villains off. And obviously, he who shall not be named is in the game and you want to defeat him as well. Each character has their own deck, so you definitely want to play to their strengths within the deck in order to push forward and beat the villains. I have to tell you, I was not a fan of the art in this game when I first saw it. I was hoping for more original art, but after I played it, I have to say the gameplay was strong. I very much enjoyed Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle.
Yes, this was my number 6, if you hadn't figured that out yet. I like, again, how you can help each other out with your strengths in during other players' turns. Sometimes you have cards in your hands or abilities that can trigger if somebody else does something. And I like the way the game evolves. And in fact, one criticism, a lot of people were throwing criticism on this when it first came out because they only played the first couple of chapters. And especially if you're an experienced player, you can skip the first 3, I think, and jump right into chapter 3 or 4. And that's when things get interesting. You have a lot more choices and difficult decisions to make. And I think it's a very solid game when you get into those later chapters. Mandi, have you played the Monster Box of Monsters?
I did. I actually did a stream on the Dice Tower. I think it was quite a few months ago. But yes, it was tough, but I liked it.
Yeah, that's a very difficult expansion, but some pretty cool stuff in there as well.
Number 4.
Number 4, Mandi and I sync up. We both chose Mechs versus Minions, the giant box from Riot Games with all these amazing minis. But what really draws me in is the drafting of your action cards. At the beginning of a round, a certain number of cards are turned up, and you have, I don't know how long the timer is, but a timer gets turned, and you have to quickly decide amongst all of you which cards everybody gets. And everyone has their priorities, because if you get a whole bunch of a particular type of card, it gets to be a stronger action, the more of those you get. Or you can fill up your action track, because you're programming your actions as you fill up your board. And you're trying to achieve the objective, but also give your teammates what they need during a particular drafting round. And so that produces some interesting discussion and difficult decisions all within that timing of that real-time drafting phase. Plus, you're smashing bad guys with giant robots. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. My kids like it too.
I actually was taught this game on the cruise by someone who was in attendance, and I apologize that his name is escaping me at the moment, and he taught both Suzanne and I. I had a lot of fun with it. I will tell you right now, it had a lot of elements that I generally don't like in the game, programming being one of them. It actually worked for me here for those reasons that you were saying, like it can actually become stronger with certain types of cards when you have an ability and the way you place it. I don't know. I found it easier to work with than normal programming games. Yeah. And I think I like that timed element with the cards because it kind of reminded me a little bit of Millennium Blades. which I absolutely adore. But that kind of quickly deciphering, okay, who's getting this? I want this card. I like that aspect of it. So Mechs vs. Minions was a fun one for me.
Awesome.
Number 3.
On to number 3, which was my number 2 last time, and that's Mice and Mystics. This is the other Plaid Hat game storytelling game. I put this above Stuffed Fables. I guess now that things have settled down just a little bit, if I'm going to compare them as actual games, I think Mice and Mystics is a more robust game, even if Stuffed Fables is a more streamlined storytelling game. Mice and Mystics is about a prince who is turned into a mouse through magical means and then has to explore castles and forests and other fantastical realms as a tiny person and meets other mice, noble mice, and defeats cockroaches and stuff. It's a great adventure game. And another one that's a good fit for families, although a little more complex, but it has more expansions available for it. And so there's a little more to explore in Mice and Mystics. I think there's more chapters as well, just in the base set. There's just a little more game in there. I love them both, but Mice and Mystics gets a little bit more of a nod from me, and it's my number 3.
I've heard quite good things about Mice and Mystics. I have not played it, but the art is adorable and definitely one I'd like to play in the future.
Yeah.
My number 3 is Aeon's End. Wow, I can no longer say that I dislike deck builders because I think I've mentioned at least 3 on this list. Aeon's End is a cooperative game that, uses deck building. And in this, you want to, again, create a deck that allows you to help you and your teammate to help defeat any of the bad things or the bad villain that you've chosen for that game. It helps you to defeat it. So in this game, it's interesting some of the way that the deck builder is placed, even just the way you place your cards and how you shuffle, and it's very different. But you also have a lot of cards that manipulate the way that cards are placed in your deck, and I like that quite a bit. You have spells and you have other cards that can come out which can affect you. So now you don't only have to defeat this major villain that's sitting there, but you also have other cards that can come out, could be their minions or just other things that can affect you. So you're trying to battle 2 things at once, trying not to get killed and trying to defeat everything before that happens. So Aeon's End for me, I was pleasantly surprised when I played this, and I think I actually did a live stream on this on the Dice Tower. So that's Aeon's End.
That's another one I have yet to play.
Again, one I think you would thoroughly enjoy.
Number 2.
So speaking of deck builders, my number 2 is Legendary, but the Legendary Encounters system, which is the more straightforward cooperative. I play the Alien version, and I like the way that cards march their way onto the board in Encounters where they're face down. And so you can spend actions to turn them up, face up, and deal with them before they become threats. Or you can just let them march their way into the danger zone and hope that it's not too bad when they get there. There's also a cooperative, I guess they call it coordinate mechanic that lets you play cards on other people's turns, helping each other out once again when it's not your turn. I just like the system a little bit more. If I had to pick a theme, I guess I'd rather play the Marvel version, but again, that's standard Legendary and not Legendary Encounters, which is a stronger co-op. Encounters was my number 3 years ago. Now it's number 2, so it just sort of flip-flopped with Mice and Mystics, but it's still a great game.
The one you picked, I know, was quite popular, and I actually didn't realize there were the 2 systems, Legendary Encounters, and then the one I spoke about earlier with Buffy with the semi-cooperative. But they must be doing something right because they're extremely popular.
They are.
Yeah. My number 2 is Too Many Bones, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before because I love it. So Too Many Bones is literally a dice-building RPG, and you kind of go, okay, well, that's new. It works here. So in this game, you're working collaboratively with your group, and everybody has their own character that they are using to help throughout the game. So, for example, in the game, I think I ended up playing one of the healers in the character, and you have your own set of dice that you need to acquire and then place in your mat. And depending on how you manipulate your dice, basically, you're going to have to try and pay for getting them, a certain way to get movement, to get abilities. In my case, it was trying to get healing abilities so I can heal myself and my partners. if you run it through a particular system, it will definitely benefit some of the other characters. I mean, and this also depends on what level of game you're playing. So I like the fact that you can go from really simple to really advanced and work together as a team to make sure you're getting the dice that benefits everybody. You're trying to beat off the baddies in the game, and some of these are tough. You have ones that are hardy, where you can hit them 10 times and really only one of those counts. So they just keep coming at you. And there's a system where everybody has to go in turn order, including the baddies. So they could generally try and kill you off sooner rather than later. That's why you really have to make sure you're planning and working together as a team. Overall, to me, it was something a little different that I hadn't seen. The component quality of this game is fantastic. And the last time I played this game was on the cruise, and someone was kind enough to bring the game on the cruise. It weighs 1,000,000 pounds, and play it with Suzanne and I, and we had a fantastic time. So my number 2, Too Many Bones.
I think of all the games on your list that I haven't played, this is the one that I most miss not having played. I actually walked by while you were playing this on the cruise and said, oh, that looks neat. But yeah, this is one that's definitely on my need-to-play list, hoping to do so at one of the conventions this summer.
I'm glad to join you on that. So if you ever need someone, I will gladly jump in. There were a lot of high fives at our table, so I'd like to continue that winning streak.
Nice.
And finally, number 1.
Okay, so remember I made a whole bunch of rules for this list in order to squeeze as much onto it as possible?
Yes.
I lumped all of the pandemics together for my number 1, because if I hadn't, I'd probably like half my list would have been Pandemic. So if you're going to force me to pick one, I'm going to go with Pandemic Legacy Season 1 because it's the one that's closest to the main game. I think the Legacy system elevates Pandemic. I think it's a great way to play the game. The nature of the persistency of the various events that happen, very cool. And also, we haven't finished Season 2 yet. But Season 1's going to get the official nod. Pandemic was my number 1 3 years ago. The Cure, the dice game, was on my list at number 5 3 years ago, but that's also excellent. If you're going to ask what my favorite of the spin-offs is, Rising Tide is my favorite. And my favorite way to play the base game is with the On the Brink expansion, which is just the first expansion with the extra rolls and the purple disease. I always add the 5th disease into the mix with Pandemic. My number 1, no matter how you play it, co-op game.
I had the liberty of actually, you taught this one to me. Was it Rising Tide?
I know we played both Rising Tide and Iberia on the cruise. I don't remember which one you joined us for.
Okay, I think it was Rising Tide, and I've played Cthulhu.
Okay.
And they were actually enjoyable, and you did a great job teaching it. So, see, I can say I played Pandemic, so I can see why you have it as your number 1.
There you go.
My number 1 is Mansions of Madness. Oh, this game is so good. It is fully cooperative at sea, so it meets the requirements. It is a app-driven board game, and, it has that whole Cthulhu horror vibe. So, same as your Eldritch Horror and Elder Sign, as you've seen earlier on my list. And it has a variety of scenarios, and you're working together to basically solve whatever mystery it is at that time. And even though it's not timed, it is timed. The game will try to axe you off if you take too long to try and solve the mystery. So sometimes it can be very difficult to win. That's why maybe starting off with some of the easier scenarios will give you a bit of confidence before you move into the longer, more complex scenarios. Mm-hmm. You're fighting monsters, you're solving puzzles, you're collecting weapons, all sorts of things which are going to try and help you win the game. Mansions of Madness, it's probably one of the games I've played the most on my shelf. Quite good.
I have an appointment to play Mansions of Madness at Dice Tower Con. I've got a couple of friends that I meet up with to play something every year, and they're like, you haven't played this yet? You need to play this. We already have a date to play it at Dice Tower Con. So I'm looking forward to that. Once they added the app and some of the fiddly aspects of setup and possible mistakes you can make from the first edition were corrected in the second, I've been very interested to play it, despite my reservations of the Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan, I know, hard to believe, of that mythos as well, but I like the whole investigative, puzzly aspect of the game, so I think I was willing to overlook and glad I did. So I absolutely think you will enjoy it as well.
So with any good cooperative team, we have all of you to thank for voting in this week's Top 10 as well. Let's look at the People's Choice selections. Number 10 was Gloomhaven, which I knew would be on the list, but I'm actually slightly surprised it's at number 10 and not farther up the list.
I agree, actually. I too am surprised.
Just because of its popularity. I mean, I considered it, but again, I haven't played... I've only played a one-off scenario of Gloomhaven, and I haven't really gotten the full experience yet, so I don't know how well it works yet.
Okay, I haven't played it at all, so no, you're one up on me.
Okay. Number 9 was Forbidden Island, which we had a whole story about, and, it's a sort of the pandemic system. Actually, we didn't talk about Forbidden Island. We talked about number 8, Forbidden Desert, which was, I think, again, very low teens for me. It was close to making it on the list. Mm-hmm. Number 7, Shadows over Camelot, a much older cooperative game with the trader mechanism as well.
Yes.
Number 6, Dead of Winter. Mandy was on your list. Number 5, Mechs vs. Minions, so points for both of us. Number 4, Ghost Stories, which neither one of us mentioned, I know would probably be on Tom's list. Tom loves the difficulty of this one. The difficulty, I've had weird things with the difficulty of Ghost Stories. Several of my games, we won handily, which is not how that game's supposed to work.
Right.
I think we just got amazing rolls, and I think we happened to draw one of the easier incarnations of Wu Fang.
Okay.
And so just a couple of times we managed to win. We just got a great lucky rolls. And so the whole this game is impossible aspect has never latched on with me. So it hasn't done. I've actually loaned it to my brother to teach at his various gaming events. And I haven't seen it in a few months.
I've never played it. So again, something else to add to my list that I need to try.
Yes. Number 3, another one that is difficult for me, Robinson Crusoe. Number 2, Pandemic, the standard game. And number 1, Pandemic Legacy, rounding out the list. Well, we have worked together, and we have completed yet another episode of the Dice Tower. Mandy, I'm so glad we finally got to do this.
Me too. I feel bad. I feel like it's all awkward and new for me, but I had a really great time.
Yeah, and plus, in just... I guess by the time folks are listening to this, just a week from now, we're going to be in Origins, and that's going to be fun. We've got live streaming going on. We'll be doing our usual, I think it's maybe 6-8 hours a day of live stream with publishers and designers all over the place. We're doing a nice rotation. We'll have one person on the main camera. We'll have people doing question and answers. We've sort of got this system down, and I'm excited to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, me too. And actually, I think I'm scheduled to play a game with Kickstarter backers, so I'm very much looking forward to that as well.
Yes, one of my backers said, I asked him what he wanted to play. He's like, I'd like to play Merchant of Venus. I said, okay, sounds good. I know how to play that one. No brushing up of rules for me. So that'll be fun. So until next time, when you folks are able to join us, I'm Eric Summerer.
I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower. Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 558, was recorded June 1st, 2018. Coming up next week, Suzanne and Mandy team up again, and in 2 weeks, the whole gang will be together in front of a live audience at Origins 2018. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has become more than you can handle, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Searing. Pride in our Tom Jolly game collection provided by Whiz War of Mine. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network, including Four Corners of the Board, Boards and Swords, The Game Pit, The Party Gamecast featuring The Party Gamecast, Board Games Insider, and Flip Flory's Super Saturday Board Game Serial. Find out more at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So we didn't work in very many curling references. What else can we throw in here before Tom, shuts this down forever?
No, you don't understand. Like, I had it ready, and I just didn't do it.
Oh,
man.
Yeah, we should just throw stuff in, and I can edit it in later. Like, or it could be... so my number 6, Mandi has on her list, so I'll just blank that end and hope to score later. Will that work? I don't know if that works. I mean, we could make it a clean sweep.
So definitely when we started doing this list, I definitely had to do some brushing up, hurry hard to get this list in order.
Brushing.
I hope that works. Oh gosh, I'm crying. I'm sorry. I know it's stupid, but it makes me laugh.
No, you rock. I think it's great.